early, right here in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. Welcome to the morning brief. I'm Kayode Okikelu. I'm not here alone as usual. Hi, guys.
Well, I was looking around to find out whether... well, it's not alone. You know, there are days and there are days. There are days when everything is here and there, haywire. But then you know that, things may change, but you'll not be reduced by anything that happens, but you rather make the best of it. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
How do I feel that was a political statement to cover for some things anyway? But that's, by the way, we know what we're talking about.
You can go ahead and reveal everything now.
Welcome to the program. I'm Jeffrey Uzoma. As always, we try to make sure we give you an exciting show as possible. In the next 2 hours, just join this ride with us. I will make sure you have an exciting moment on the program right here on Channels Television.
I think at some point we need to have a spin-off for both of you. So after the show, there will be the Bukola and Jeffrey show. Because I love it.
Because I've been looking forward to that, by the way. After the Bukola and Kayode show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll have the Jeffrey and Kayode show.
Okay.
All men, But hey, what a day it is here in Nigeria. I mean, just trying to lighten the mood. I mean, we know the situation of things. We know what the news would most likely say. But hey, for the next 2 hours, let's walk you through what really matters today, which is Wednesday. It's midweek. It's usually that, dip. So let's take you out of it as we walk you through the biggest stories and conversations right here on the show. So let's show you what we have for you, shall we? Well, it's yet another day of protests right here in Nigeria, but this time it's by the Nigeria Labour Congress over the rising cost of living and economic hardship. But it appears that the other part of organized labor, that's the Trade Union Congress, the TUC, will not be participating in that rally, as it says that it will instead continue engaging with the government. So we take you to the scene of the protests as we cross over live to our correspondents in the nation's capital and across the country and speak to the demands of Nigerians today.
Well, already Nigerians are viewing that with some form of trepidation. What's going to happen? Well, Kayode, did you say it's Wednesday? It's Tuesday, actually. Maybe Kayode is in a hurry to have the week over and done with.
You got me there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, elections have consequences, as they say, but when you look deeper, you may also view the consequences with some objectivity. A year after the February 25, 2023 election, INEC has released its side of the story about the conduct of a poll, which has had its fair share of controversy. We break down the explanations from INEC and the recommendations for a better selection, or if you like, election process.
Well, that's not all. Let's talk about the fun part, guys. Plus, we bring you an inspiring story of a man who took our beloved Agege bread. Now, those of you who live outside Lagos, I don't know how to explain Agege bread. Maybe Kayode will help me out with all of that. But he's taking Agege bread outside the shores of our country, and he's building an empire around it. What are the lessons in his journey to help Nigeria better harness the economic potential in the vast diaspora, where millions of Nigerians are resident? That's the big question today. So, hey, if you're a lover of Agege bread, it's made its way outside the shores of the country. What a story.
Absolutely.
You'll find out the guy who's behind this.
Yeah, so, those are bright spots for us to look to and be inspired. How do I explain Agege bread to people who don't stay in Lagos? Well, it's Agege bread.
Well, I can attempt it.
Let's do this.
It's very, very fluffy.
Right.
Very soft. It's your ideal, perfect combination with what we call ewa going, the type of beans made by our brothers from neighboring Benin Republic.
Oh.
Yes. Well, the downside to it is the fear of bromate. So if you don't, you would rather not have bromate in your bread, so you would not go for Agege bread. But it's also a
you will not go for the ones that are
it also leaves a wonderful taste in the mouth when consumed with butter. So that's Agege bread for you.
Yeah, when I used to live in Yaba.
Are you hungry?
When I used to live in Yaba, we go to the place, the exact spot where they make this Agege bread. From the oven, direct, just buy. That's the best part of Agege bread. If you haven't... Those of you who live in Yaba and around Lagos, you understand what I'm saying. So it's like a burger. When you get akara, slice it, put in between. Oh,
Oh, okay. So, Jeffrey, besides Asun, there's also something.
They call it like the local burger. So I don't know who uses Owagoin. Maybe Bukola. Me, I don't use Owagoin. So you use akara. Like my producer,
so
who is
Jeffrey also has another favorite. So we know
now describing it for those who don't live in Lagos.
No. I'm just saying that we know what to plan for you on your birthday.
Okay.
Well, we know this is a breakfast show, but I didn't know it would be this graphic. Now I'm really hungry, but that is what we have for you on the show. We have these issues to cheer you up, really, because, hey, that's what we have to do. Going through tough times, but hey, we have to last through those tough times. So your mental health is important. Smile while you can, cheer while you can. Yes, if the hard issues are there, by all means, let's attack them together. And that's what we're going to be doing for you on the show. We're taking your comments, by the way, from just about 7:20 all through the end of the show. So send them in on WhatsApp. Yes, we're big on WhatsApp with the number right there on your screen. Just messages, no calls, please, right? You can also hashtag us on a post, maybe it's a comment, a question, or what have you. Hashtag CTV Morning Brief across social media, and we'll definitely find you. And if you've got videos, particularly about the protest or any other thing happening around you today, we'd like you to send them in and then bring attention to that one. So send them our way. The Morning Brief is live right now. We'll take a moment, and when we return, we'll be walking you through the top stories that will shape the conversation today. Stay with us right here. Let's now bring you your top stories on the brief. What a day it will turn out to be today as members of the Nigerian Labour Congress are converging at the Labour House in the nation's capital, Abuja, while other members across the state are expected to meet by, 7:30 a.m. at the NLC State Secretariat for today's nationwide protest against economic hardship and what the NLC calls the non-implementation of the 16-point agreement reached with the federal government on October the 2nd, 2023. Well, a last gasp attempt by the federal government last night, actually late into the night, to persuade Labour, particularly the NLC, actually ended without an agreement. The meeting, which was hosted by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. George Akume, with other government representatives had in attendance leaders of the NLC and the TUC, with the NLC President Joe Agege insisting that the protest will go ahead. But the protest will not be happening with the full strength of organized labor, as the leadership of the Trade Union Congress says it will not be a part of the planned rally because it was not part of the meeting where the resolution to embark on a strike was taken. Now, the president of the union, Mr. Festus Osifo, told journalists at a news conference in Abuja that instead of a protest, the Congress will be engaging the federal government on the implementation of the 15 solutions which its members have outlined to address the current high cost of living.
I know a lot of you've read the letter that was leaked. The letter was actually meant for TUC members, but it found its way to the press. Unfortunately, really regrettably. But I think you've read that letter. And I think it was very clearly stated in the letter. I think the reasons are clearly stated. So, we were not part of the process ab initio. We were not part of the agreement ab initio. So there is nothing to opt out from at all. Like as I have said repeatedly, that in trade union movement, you have a toolbox. That in that toolbox, you have different tools that you could use in calling government to order. The monetary policy managers should determine the true value of Naira. This can be easily implemented by CBN, who are the managers of our monetary policy, by directing banks to reject dollar bid above the threshold of 580 Naira to 650 Naira.
Live reporting of the protests across the country. Well, earlier on, the presidency had actually appealed to the Nigerian Labour Congress to shelve its planned nationwide protest. But the Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris, who was speaking after the Federal Executive Council meeting, said that the federal government had fulfilled almost all the demands put forward by the labor union. We'll take a listen to the minister.
All the 15 points that were agreed upon with labor in the last quarter of last year, in October last year, they have almost all been fulfilled. Over 80% compliance by the federal government. And so that is why government sometimes is baffled about the need for the Nigerian Labour Congress to think that it is appropriate for it to embark on a strike at this point. Federal government keeps calling on them, and we are not going to relent in drawing their attention to the need for them to see reason with government. While government is going through, and Nigeria is going through challenges of the moment, we don't think that it is the right time for Labour to embark on any kind of protest or whatsoever. Every point that they had laid down in the conversations or discussions we have had with them have been made. Except those ones that you cannot just buy off the shelf. For example, the issue of the CNG. So we are calling on the Nigerian Labour Congress to see reason. And we are also thanking other affiliates, organized labor, the TUC, and about 65 other organizations who are seeing things the way that the federal government is seeing by asking them, by saying they are not going to join the Nigerian Labour Congress.
But that's not all. Other Nigerians have actually been taking that initiative without waiting for labor to make a case for improved economic conditions. From Edo State, where a coalition of civil society organizations embarked on a peaceful protest asking government to address the high cost of living in the country, to Osun State, where we also saw some CSOs expressing their grievances on the current economic hardship. Well, Lagos State was actually not left behind in all of this, as protesters also gathered under the Ojuelegba Bridge to vent their displeasure on the high cost of living in the country. Well, let's move on now. Finally, what you could call a green light has been given for the implementation of the much talked about Oronsoye report, albeit partially, as the Federal Executive Council has given a 12-week ultimatum for the merging of some parastatal agencies and commissions, while others will be subsumed, scrapped, or relocated. Well, this, according to the Special Advisor to the President on Policy Coordination, Ms. Rizabala Usman, is in line with the needs to reduce cost of governance and streamline efficiency across the governance value chain. Now, for context, the Oronsoye report was submitted in 2012 to the Jonathan administration. Then in 2014, the Jonathan government released a white paper on that report. Well, the Buhari administration, after re-examining the white paper, also released a second white paper in August 2022, but did not implement it. But let's walk you through the list of some of the organizations affected and what this is about to do.
Our administration has taken a very bold step towards implementation on aspects of the Oronsoye panel report, which speaks to mergers, subsuming, scrapping, and relocation of parastatals, agencies, and commissions of federal government. This is in line with the need to reduce cost of governance and ensure that we have streamlined efficiency across the governance value chain. For agencies that are required to be merged, I'll take it. National Agency for Control of AIDS, HIV/AIDS, NACA, to be merged with the Center for Disease Control in the Federal Ministry of Health. National Emergency Management Agency to be merged with the National Commission for Refugee Migration and Internally Displaced Persons. The Directorate of Technical Cooperation in Africa to be merged with the Directorate of Technical Aid and to function as a department in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This compact with Nigeria Servicom to be subsumed to function as a department under the Bureau for Public Service Reform. The Border Communities Development Agency to be subsumed to function as a department under the National Boundary Commission. The National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission to be subsumed into the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Commission. The National Blood Service Commission to be converted into an agency and relocated to the Federal Ministry of Health. The Nigerian Diaspora Commission to be converted into an agency and to be relocated to the Federal Ministry of Finance.
By the way, the FEC says that those changes will not lead to staff disengagement. that has also been in the mix. Meanwhile, the Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, says that the FEC has also approved the immediate restart of the direct payments to 12 million households, comprising 60 million Nigerians.
The key recommendation of the panel was that, especially given the heightened limited household purchasing power at this time of rising prices, particularly elevated food prices, it's important to restart the program. So the direct payments to households, direct payments to 12 million households comprising 60 million Nigerians is to resume immediately with the proviso, with the important proviso that every beneficiary will be identified by their NIN, National Identity Number, and their BVN, Bank Verification Number. I think it became obvious that the payments were not going as originally envisaged. The idea was, and it remains, that payments are made, and the payments were meant to be verified, and the register was meant to be one that had the integrity between the name on the register and the name that eventually got the funds, and it was meant to be individual payments. That was not the case.
Moving now to security. No fewer than 40 kidnapped victims have been successfully rescued from kidnappers' enclave in Gongomaliki Mountain, located in Yoro local government area of Taraba State. Now, their rescue is essentially sequel to a joint effort between the police, professional hunters, and vigilante groups who acted on intelligence gathering. So, Cherry News on that front, particularly when it comes to security in Taraba State. But let's head over to the courts now, where the Ezendigbo of Agege State in Lagos, Frederick Nwajagu, who is charged with terrorism offenses, has told the Lagos High Court sitting in Tafawa Balewa Square, Lagos Island, that he did not know that there was a law prohibiting a person from mentioning the indigenous people of Biafra. That's IPOB. Now, he said this while giving evidence before trial judge Justice Yetunde Adesoya yesterday. Nwajagu, who's standing trial on a 9-count charge bordering an attempt to commit acts of terrorism, financing terrorism, participating in terrorism, and meeting to support a prescribed entity, said that yesterday at the resumed hearing, gave evidence actually while being led by his counsel, Mr. Mefo Atudo, where he told the court that he had never referred to himself as a king, but a leader of the Igbo-speaking people in Agege State. Now, after listening to the argument on bail application, Justice Adesoya adjourned until March 26th for ruling on the bail application. So I will follow that story. But away from that to business now, it is decision day for the Central Bank of Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee, that's the MPC, as it will hold, whether it will hold the interest rate or hike it, as some analysts have projected. That's a big question on the minds of Nigerians. Now, the MPC actually kicked off its 2-day meeting yesterday amid skyrocketing inflation and weakening Naira, marking the first time, actually, that the MPC will meet since the CBN governor, as Mr. Olaimi Kadoso, assumed office in October last year. Now, the MPC is also expected to focus on several key considerations, including evaluating the disinflation trends observed in advanced economies and monitoring the measures implemented by global monetary authorities. Recall that at its last meeting held in July 2023, the committee pegged the benchmark interest rate at 18.75%. Let's talk sports now. Well, Cherry News, particularly for the Super Falcons of Nigeria. They're now through to the final round of the qualifiers for the 2024 Paris Olympics Games. So just one game separates them from yet another Olympics. The Falcons defeated the indomitable Lionesses of Cameroon 1-0 at the MKO Abiola Stadium in Abuja to go through on 1-0 aggregate after a goalless draw in Cameroon last week. Estelle Korunko actually scored the only goal of the match in the 14th minute. And Nigeria will now face the winner between South Africa or Tanzania for one of the two tickets in April.
Weren't creating those chances, I would have a real concern. I think when you get into tight matches like this, you see it at every level. You know, chances were created yesterday with Liverpool and Chelsea, and they weren't finished, and it ends up game. So, you know.
So excited about that for our girls. Wish them the very best. But that's not all making the rounds this morning. Sweden has actually cleared its final obstacle to joining NATO after Hungary's parliament ratified the bid in what Sweden's prime minister called a historic day, while other alliance members expressed relief at the move spurred by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Well, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg said that Sweden would make the alliance stronger and safer, while the United States, which is the main alliance power, as well as Britain and Germany, welcomed Sweden's now imminent accession. Germany Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that having Sweden in NATO strengthens its defense alliance and with its security of Europe and the world. Russia's invasion 2 years ago prompted Sweden and neighbor Finland to apply to join the transatlantic bloc, ending their long-standing stance of non-alignment. So those are the major stories making the rounds, and they will shape the conversation today and in the coming days. But let's take a look at what you are saying. It's that part of the show where we walk through your comments across social media. And of course, Jeffrey joins me to do this one. What a day, Jeffrey.
Yeah, a day we're all looking at as what will happen as we get into the main day. It just got started. We understand that the Labour Union, of course, they are going on with their strike protest, I should say. But let's remember that they said this protest is a precursor. If the government doesn't act right in their words, perhaps what they mean is 2023 agreement, that they are a 15-point resolution or agreement. If the government doesn't comply with all of those agreements, then what will happen after this protest will be, we've tried, then we will embark on an indefinite strike action. But the TUC is not in the same boat with them. So that is where the challenge is. So let's see how this plays out. That we're on ground at all places as much as possible to see how this is playing out across your city. Are they complying? If you have videos, of course, send it to us. We'll amplify your voice. But let's see what you're saying on X whilst we're tracking exactly what's happening around the country with the protests. This is for the hunger protest that we've been seeing occurring. We saw one yesterday, I think in Benin City.
In Lagos.
In Lagos, in Osun, and across board. So this person says, hunger has no tribe, region, or religion. All Nigerians are in it together. That's why I keep emphasizing that politics is gone. What remains is governance. For good governance to thrive, all hands must be on deck. All should join in salvaging, I guess that's what he wanted to say, the country. I pray PBAT, that's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, succeeds.
Well, Revolution Now, MG on X, also has this to say. But this is targeted at some of the, what people have perceived as the source of some of our economic decisions. It says fuel subsidy removal, floating of the Naira, and other IMF policies remain the primary source of unprecedented hardship in the country. And the IMF has come under a lot of flack of late, particularly for some of the advices it has given the country. In fact, there had to be some sort of clarification recently again from the quarter. So, which way forward? That's what Revolution Now has to say.
IMF has always been on flag for a long time. Even during the structural adjustment program, people say, oh, why would we listen to them? Well, as I say, sometimes these issues are not as straight as possible. Edolite says, when there is an increase in the price of fuel and electricity, we know where to go and who to vent our anger on. A hungry man is a very angry man. The earlier this unnecessary increase in food items is solved, the better for Nigeria.
You know how Nigerians have a way of just infusing some humor. I mean, we're talking about the situation of the economy and someone just drops a comment and we chuckle for a moment and then face the issues. Well, that's what T.A. Bud on X is doing this morning. By the way, this particular post is a mixture of English and Yoruba. So it says, Nigeria will be better by Friday. Goes on to say, Okweju, Saturday. That's essentially saying, well, it might be Saturday. Then he now says, Awarireri, which means, well, if it doesn't get better on Saturday, it will get better on Sunday, and ends by saying Elo Fokombale, which means put your mind at rest. So, hey, that's just another way.
Just another way to look at the situation. And we like it. We just have to look for a way to be happy.
Yeah, but I'm glad we're saying that Nigeria will get better.
But the issue is
not sure when.
Yeah, we don't know when, but we hope this is resolved.
And it's getting better progressively.
We hope this is resolved. So this is coming from Ziki, says, we say no to the impoverishment of Nigerians. We reject insensitive policies that have reduced the welfare of the people to nothingness. We say no to the rising cost of food, education, and living in Nigeria.
And quite a lot, really, that you're saying about this. But the focus is on end hunger. I don't know if you saw some videos from, I think was it Yaba, where the customs was trying to...
Yes, I heard there were casualties. I understand. If I mean, I stand to be correct. I think they were supposed to pay 10,000 to get some products or commodity, and then the number of people. I don't know whether it was a stampede or
it was a stampede. That's what the statement said.
But this is always the challenge when you are setting out for such initiative. You should know this can happen. And then you plan for it. So this, for me, is inexcusable. People shouldn't die trying to get food to eat. It's not acceptable.
Indeed.
But the customs, I'm sure they have an explanation.
Well, they did say that they had the police and other security agents. They even had, some sort of health provision, ambulances on board. But sadly, that happened. There's more, actually, that you're saying. And this one is from Femi Low-Key. Femi is not low-key this morning. It says, may God bless us with leaders that will not subject its citizens to begging and save us from those who weaponize poverty to stay in power.
Legal Eagle, D_Legal Eagle says, let's start holding our governors accountable. What measures is your governor implementing to alleviate the severity of Nigeria's economic challenges? I agree. Totally. And I have slightly more money or some major more money. Let's then put it to use, because people ask the increase or the subsidy money, where is it going to? They shared it amongst themselves. Tiers of government. I'll continue to say the 3 tiers of government, they shared it among themselves. So it's not the federal government alone, the states and the local government. I think I need to get that directory from budget where you can go and find out exactly what amount came to your local government comes to your local government every month.
Yeah.
So you can look at that chairman in the face with tinted cars and say, okay, calm down, explain. It's as simple as that. That is if the governors allow them to use the money, by the way.
That'll be the day. But that's not all that is trending really this morning. The Oronsoi report is also big on the news. The fact that we've had to wait how many years
12.
now? 12 years. Well, the committee started its work 2011. The report came out 2012. And ever since, we've had government releasing white paper, another white paper, raising committees and the rest. Well, yesterday, FEC gave some sort of approval. Not the full thing, but at least a major part of the Oronsoi report. So this is what you are saying about that as FEC approves implementation of a Oronsoi report to merge agencies. Emmanuel Adeagbo on X as well says that President Tinubu's decision to merge agencies of government is really a big step, is what you say, to cutting the cost of governance, especially as we have a lot of them performing overlapping roles. Now it's time for Nigerians to ask for the abolition of bicameralism. One parliament is enough.
Let's put it on record. I think I also saw some videos. This is not the first time governors or presidents are attempting this. It started with President Goodluck Jonathan.
Yes.
It's like every government from Jonathan to Muhammadu Buhari now to President Bola Tinubu tried to implement it in piecemeal, directly or indirectly, because I even heard him saying he's going to change some structures and all of that during President Muhammadu Buhari's time, when he asked them to review the white paper and see what can be implemented.
Nothing came out of that.
Nothing came out of it.
Another community was raised, but nothing came out.
Nothing came out. So let's see how this will be done. This looks like action now, and let's hope it works. President Tinubu's merger, is that the one I'm supposed to read? Yes. Abayomi Adebayo says President Tinubu's merger of agencies is commendable, but I pray it's more than just a symbolic gesture on paper. This will inflate the operational costs of the new host, since the size will increase. Similar approach should be applied to a cabinet for optimal efficiency.
Absolutely. I know some are saying, did you say nothing came out of it? Okay, a committee came out of it. Is that fair enough? Is that what you want to hear? A committee came out of it. White papers came out of it, but implementation did not come out of this. This next one is from Edoyakulo, which, by the way, I should say is Olukayode spelled backwards, just in case you're wondering what Edoyakulo is. That's a handle of Mr. Dipo right there. Says that will be good, talking about the Orosanye report implementation as recommended, but let's see if it will be selective implementation or outright audio adoption.
Well, there's highlighted some of the things that they will do. If you look at that report, the federal government in their white paper rejected a lot of things. Reject, noted, accept. So there are a few accepts. So it's a report you can go see for yourself. It's a public document. So get to see whether the NEMA will now be in the other agency. So some will be subsumed. Literally, now you're not good enough to be an agency. You're consuming money. Let's take you back as a department within the ministry. So all of that. But no fears, civil servants, your job is safe according to the federal government. But the whole idea is to cut costs and improve efficiency in the system. Let's see how it plays out. That's the question. This is Eric says, kudos to President Tinubu for taking a bold step towards real change by ordering the full implementation of the Orosanye report. He's demonstrating a commitment to action, not just words. Let's make this a turning point for progress and a brighter future. And when I see this, there are reports lying down, gathering dust that can change this country. Orosanye report, Justice Uwe's report on electoral reform, and the 2014 confab.
That's a big one.
You just pick up those documents and see the richness of some of the ideas that came from it. And you know that we don't have political will in some spaces. All right.
Oh, there you go. Those are some of the things you're saying. I'll just take this one, maybe to amplify some of the skepticism that people are sharing. And this is from Advocacy for Good Governance, saying, how many presidents are implementing this same report, please? Jonathan implemented it, well, not quite, and that's what we're saying. Buhari implemented it, not quite again.
They attempted.
And now Tinubu is implementing the same report. Just to say it's the process. They have 12 weeks to go on this one, so they're still the process.
2 months, 2 weeks.
Tell me, which country will take Nigeria serious with this kind of audio implementations? I know we'll get it right one day, but the big question is this the day will begin to turn the tide? Well, those are some of the comments we have for you. Don't forget to keep sending them in. Hashtag CTV Morning Brief. Or you can just send us your questions, comments on WhatsApp. The numbers, you see them on your screen during the course of a program. What we'll do now is head over back to the main set as we have an all-important conversation which you do not want to miss. It's the day of protests by the NLC. We're joining our correspondents across the country and having a conversation on the demands of labor. Jeffrey,
exactly.
We're ready for this.
We're ready for this. So we'll meet you on the other side.
Nigeria.
Well, it's literally the month of protests. February has seen its fair share of protests across board, from Niger State to Ibadan. What you just saw there was in Edo State. By the way, there were also protests in Osun and here in Lagos. And, well, the purpose of that protest will seem the same, essentially about the economic situation in the country today. And it's quite simple, their demands for government to ease the suffering of the people. Some call it end hunger protest. For some people, end economic hardship. But the purpose, it would seem, is the same. So let's speak with one of the people, at least those who are speaking on behalf of people this morning, particularly the protest in Edo State. Don't forget that we're still following what's happening across the country. And we're joined by Mr. Leftist Austin Enabulele, who is interim chairman, the Executive Council of Edo Civil Society Organizations, joins us live from our Benin studio this morning. Mr. Enabulele, good to have you on the morning brief. Right. Well, you led that protest, or at least you were part of the people that led the protest yesterday. And this is one of the many protests we've seen over the past few days. In fact, there will be more protests today by the NLC, even though the TUC is not joining in that protest. But I'd like you to tell us the personal stories from those protesting and the people you are representing, just to drive this point home for those who are saying, I mean, why are you protesting? What exactly is going on? I'd like us to start on that note, then we'll pick it up from there. All right, we'll come back to Mr. Enabulele to have that conversation, but it's important to put human faces to these stories. There's a tendency to just look at the placards, look at the procession, and forget that there are real people going through real issues. We have talked about these issues time and again, how people who earn a minimum wage, for example, will definitely be struggling at this time to buy, basic amenities, buy food, pay for transportation. I mean, not to talk of rent, guys. So, I mean, these are people protesting, but behind the placards are the real stories.
Indeed, Kadi. And, it's significant to just mention that Edo State is just, maybe one out of the 36 states of the Federation where civil servants earn above the minimum wage of 30,000 naira. So if citizens in Edo are coming out to protest, that means that, the rising cost of living is hitting hard on everyone. Incomes are eroding. I mean, you go to the market to purchase an item on a particular day, and less than 4 days after, the price has changed significantly.
Even the same day.
I experienced that, yes. I experienced that over the weekend. I purchased something at 8,000 naira on Friday, and by Monday, it was already 11,000 naira. Jeffrey.
It's quite sad to see some of these things happen. They may be dancing and all of that, but there's nothing exciting about what they're doing. This is just them just trying to be, make the most, have some energy to be able to drive home their demand. So the gentleman you're seeing dancing and holding the end hunger placard, they say end hunger now. It's an emergency, and this is the most, perhaps that's what we call it, the very basics of things that everybody should have. You may not have the luxury of wearing the best of clothes or living in the best of houses in terms of shelter, but nobody should suffer hunger. So when a country sees citizens across Niger State, Kogi State, and some other states like Sokoto, now Benin City, and other places in the country having to go through all of this because of the economic policies of the government, it's quite disheartening. So the government has to do a lot more. I heard the minister explaining that it has made some efforts in reaching the agreement between them and Labour, but we had a Labour representative the other time saying most of those things have not been met. So I don't know who is telling the truth and who is not telling the truth about this, because we've had this conversation with the representative of Labour So the government has to just look at citizens and just be compassionate to do what is quite needful to ensure that people don't go out on the street to, talk about food. It's almost embarrassing that we're talking about food as a country. We can protest about a lot of things, but food is not one of them. Like what Bukola says, in terms of this, we need to do something urgently because of the rate at which prices increase. But let's come to the gentleman from Benin, Enabulele. Thank you so much for coming back. We needed to sort that technical issue out. So Kayode asked personal stories you get from the people that are protesting from your perspective.
Like I was saying, my personal experience is not different from that. When you go to the market, discover that even if you go there with a whole lot of money, little or not, because things the market is because of so much increase. And like we said yesterday, and it's a fact, that to the extent of you buying a vegetable leaf, pumpkin leaf, that is being planted by our local farmers, even at the back of our houses, just to help and hard work for a living. When you go there, they tell you, if you ask, why is this so expensive? They tell you, no, dollar don't increase. You ask, why is the rice so expensive? Everything now bought out. And for us, that beats our imagination. The suffering is too much. You cannot take 10. The very small black cellophane that is being used to sell in the market, the one they call omoge. I'm not talking about the big black water bag. You have 10,000 naira to the market. Whatever you buy with that 10,000 cannot even fill that small cellophane that they use in wrapping things in the market. That is to tell you the extent that this hardship and how cost of living in Nigeria is. People can no longer feed again. Those days you can ask your child after feeding the child, are you full? Are you satisfied? But now, you can't ask a child that question. Because if you ask, he will tell you the honest truth, that he's not full. She's not satisfied. Because the food that was given to the child is not as it used to. It's not enough for the child. Because the parents now want to manage whatever they have in the house, at least have something in your stomach so that you don't go to. And of course, when these children go hungry in the next few minutes, you now start telling them, don't worry, something very soon. Nigerians are not suffering. The way Nigeria is now is, what we are experiencing in Nigeria now is better yesterday, not better today. You take your mind back. Let me start with the democracy time. Olusegun, we all complain, Olusegun's time was not okay. Jonathan's time was not okay. Even the president, Buhari, that left yesterday, we all complain. But here we have today, Buhari that left yesterday is even better than what we are experiencing from the president of Nigeria. That is to tell you that yesterday seems to be better. Nigerians are suffering.
Well, Mr. Enabulele, it will be very difficult to counter you on that one when we have cause to reflect and recall where we're coming from, particularly with regards to the exchange rate, to inflation, and to the price of, commodities. But just last week, in addressing this, the vice president had said that about 42 illegal routes through which food, were smuggled out of the country were discovered. And he also took a swipe at the opposition and alleged that they were responsible for the a rising cost of commodities. How much of that do you think is responsible for what Nigerians are experiencing today as far as rising cost of commodities is concerned?
When we say routes are being out of have agents responsible appointed these people. Why had they not supervising and calling them? That we discover all of this. Does it mean that we really do not have sufficient food in Nigeria? At least food. They have farmers, even to the very local farmers in our country, in Nigeria. So when we say it's as a result of food exportation, food going out illegally, how? Who are these persons taking out this food illegally? Where are they taking it through? How come the people we put on these borders are not doing the needful? So when we say it's the illegal foods that are being exported or taken out of Nigeria, for me, it still doesn't happen. Because at the end of the day, the things that are taken out of Nigeria are the things that they have requested for exportation. And these exportations are going out through a channel where people are supposed to earn. So the remaining ones that are not taken out illegally, how do we regulate how they are being sold? How do we regulate and monitor how the remaining one that is within, that are not being illegally, like you said, or like the government said, that are not illegally exported or taken out of Nigeria? How do we control? How do we regulate them? How do we monitor them to be sure that these ones that are remaining here are sold for the prices they are sold? That is the question.
Some questions you just wonder. It's not rocket science. These things are clear cut, and the questions raise more questions, and we can go on and on about this. But I'd like to maybe perhaps tie what you have done with what Labour is planning to do today, particularly the NLC, and what we've seen across the country. Your protest in Edo State yesterday, does it align? Do you see it aligning with what the NLC is doing today? The NLC premised its own protest on the non-implementation of an agreement which it had with the federal government in October last year. So is your protest, does it derive its own spirit from the NLC, or they are different, or you think that you are trying to achieve the same goal for Nigerians who are watching and trying to just piece together all of the different protests we've seen across the country?
Well, like we all know, the NLC is basically election of members. But the question we've always asked, if you fight only for your workers, then fight for the remaining Nigerians. To an extent too, we cannot say we are not fighting the same cause, because the truth remains that even the workers are Nigerians. But workers are in the minority. They don't fight for the entrepreneur, fight for the trader, fight for like the fight is holistic. It's just that of recent we also have not had the kind of labor that Nigerians envisage or Nigeria hope to see today. Because some months back, we have had series of protests that was to be done by labor. In the dying minutes, you hear that they are called in back. But in all, what we are fighting for as civil society organizations, as civil society, what we are fighting for is the majority of Nigeria, including the workers. Because the truth is, our business and concern is for the human person and the Nigerians. So the cause of the NLC and that of ours, I would say, is not so far from each other. And they sustain this to make sure we get. So,
all right. All right, just in about a minute, if you can, let's trickle it down to the governors and the states now. How much of campaign is geared towards ensuring that even the governors who are now earning extra monies from FAC allocation, because we can't just look at the federal government alone, we also need to look at the state. So what is the organization and the other groups affiliate doing to ensure that these governors, acts in a way that people will be happy with their leadership, because people are hungry?
Permit me to say, money is being shared in Nigeria amongst the elites. Just recent, should that be 5 days ago, $1 trillion and 1,110,000,000 was shared within the elites in this country. Because if you times 30 billion times 37, including the Federal Capital Territory, you will see that we have just shared over ₦1 trillion within the elites. And you ask me, you say it's a palliative. This money, how does it get to the people? In my state, the first tranche of the palliative that came from the federal government was spent solely in billions. I'm talking about billions. Was spent solely for free buses. In my state, Edo State, billions for free buses, according to the state government, that they gave them, they released free buses for Edolites or Edo residents to go to their places of work or wherever they want to go freely. How does that free bus, how many Edolites even rode or even entered that same free buses wherever they went? Personally, I haven't even entered that bus. So, including the state governments, they are doing injustice to their different states.
Right.
We are saying that this money that has been collected be shared amongst the governments in the 36 states. Should be channeled towards fixing the problems. We all know where the problem is coming from. If the system is working, if we have a good refinery, why will you be sharing palliative? If we have a working system, why will you be sharing money for the governors?
Well, Mr. Leftist Nabulele, it's quite interesting the points you make. Some have said if the refineries work, it's not a guarantee that the price of petrol will come down, or if government will still want to be paying subsidy. But clearly these conversations can never exhaust them. But we'd like to thank you so much for at least giving us a side of the people yet again, just in case government is missing all of that. So government knows where it ought to act and what it ought to do. Mr. Leftist Austin Enabulele, Interim Chairman, the Executive Council of Edo Civil Society Organizations, thank you so much. Maybe another day we'll talk about your name, Leftist, because I think it is clear what kind of political ideology you hold with that name, Leftist. But thank you for your time and wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Just some bite for you on what is going on with the protests across the country. We're still following what's playing out in the FCT and the nation's capital with the NLC. But we'll take a moment now, and when we return, we'll talk about yet another important conversation which concerns governance. They say elections have consequences, right? Stay with us this morning.
Welcome back to the Morning Brief, and we're reaching you live right here from our Lagos studio, global headquarters of Channels Television. Quite a conversation we just had there, and productive as it may be, sometimes you just wonder if we're taking some steps forward and many steps backward, but we hope that there'll be progress in the long run. And just to add that our correspondents are across states of the Federation, and we're hoping to get reports on this NLC-led mass protests to protest the rising cost of living. From that, we move on to our next subject, and which is that report. I call it a self-assessment report released by INEC days ago about its conduct of the 2023 general elections, in which it addressed the elephant in the room. That's its failure to upload the results, the presidential election results, real-time to the IREV portal. So we're going to be scrutinizing some of the positions put forward by INEC, which is cited as reasons for its failure to upload the presidential election results real-time. And we have joining us to look at that Mr. Samson Itodo. Of course, you know him as Executive Director, Yaga Africa. Mr. Itodo is, of course, a friend of the house. Mr. Itodo, it's good to have you as always. Welcome to the Morning Brief on Channels Television.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you all.
Yes, before we take a dive into the INEC report on its conduct of 2023 presidential election, one subject that seems to be the talking point, of course, that we've also reviewed some of the thoughts of our viewers, is the commencement of the implementation of the Steve Orasai report. We know that to an extent, civil society organizations are involved. So we'd like you to speak to it, particularly with the planned merger of agencies as announced by the special advisor to the president. What are your thoughts, Mr. Itodo?
I think the president deserves commendation for taking this bold step. This is one action that several presidents have shied away, from implementing. This report has been a subject of reference in discussion around cutting the cost of governance because over time we've seen institutional rivalry that has undermined governance and delivery of effective services to Nigerians. And that report contains expansive recommendations on the need to rationalize or cut down or whatever word you use. So we are delighted to see that the president has taken this bold step. But we wait to see the implementation, though a timeline has been set. We hope that, these institutions that will be merged or will be subsumed other agencies or some that will be scrapped, implemented. One, I think it's important to note that from what we have read from the presidency, it appears that the recommendations are not adopted whole scale. And what I mean is there are more agencies and institutions that should be scrapped and should be merged. But the list that we saw, in my understanding, it's not exhaustive. So will we expect more rationalization? I think this is a question that the presidency needs to answer, but it's good they've taken this step, but there are more agencies that should be scrapped. And if you situate this within the context of cutting the cost of governance, looking at the number of agencies and institutions, I think that we need to look at the cost-benefit analysis of this rationalization. How much is the country going to save from this particular action taken by the president? And it's significant. And if it's not, then perhaps we need to go back to the report and look at what additional agencies need to be scrapped and need to be subsumed. But this is a step in the right direction, and we look forward to the implementation of this in the long run. But it's also important to note that, and I read the statement, that this action taken will not affect the jobs of the Nigerians who are in those agencies. It's heartwarming to read because when you rationalize and you take this action, the people who work in those agencies will be uncertain about their future. And if I follow the discussion that you had in the last segment about, the socioeconomic conditions of Nigerians, we don't want a situation where this action will plunge Nigerians into more poverty. And so whatever action that is taken, there has to be a safety net for the Nigerians who work in those institutions.
Well, rationalization is the key word from what you have said, Mr. Itodo, and it speaks to some of the concerns that Nigerians have expressed about the possibility of the mergers burgeoning the newly expanded agencies, and if that would lead to the ultimate objective of cutting the cost of governance. But we'll see how that goes. Let's now delve into the INEC report. First of all, let's look at funding, perhaps before we begin to look at the explanations provided by INEC. 353 billion naira is what INEC expended on the elections. And in fact, it spoke to the application to the government for additional funding after the initial release of 303 billion naira, which brings the entire expenditure of the commission to 353 billion naira. When you look at all of the operational challenges highlighted in that report, has INEC justified the expenditure of that humongous sum on the elections?
Well, when you look at cost of elections in election management, you have to really unpack what the cost entails. One, it is complex, to conduct elections in a country like Nigeria. Why? Because of our population, but also our geography. Now, what the public needs to understand is that for every one voter, the country spends between $8 to $12 on each voter. And what that means is in the last election, every voter was entitled to 5 ballot papers. And these are the 93 million registered voters are entitled to 5 ballot papers, 1 for president, 1 for Senate, 1 for House of Reps, 1 for governor, and then 1 for State House of Assembly, especially in states where governorship elections held, excluding the 8 states in the off-cycle route of elections. Each voter is entitled to a voter's card, especially those who were registered post the 2019 elections. That itself cost a lot of money. Now, when you look, at voter registration, you look at the deployment of technology, because a large chunk of that money was expended on 2 things. One, the technology, and in this case, the BVAS deployed, because close to 40%, 35 to 40% of that budget was expended on the technology. And then the personnel, because we required over 1 million human beings, Nigerians, who were paid, allowances, whether training or election day allowances for what? For the conduct of elections. So, elections actually are a very expensive endeavor. And these are, when we talk about the cost of elections, we need to factor this in to this conversation. And the big questions Nigerians are asking is whether, based on the outcome of the elections, INEC has justified, the spending. And they have every right, to make those claims. First, if you spend 30-something% of your budget on technology, so BVAS, and the question is, did the BVAS, deliver on its promise of deepening the credibility of the elections? Did the BVAS successfully upload results on the INEC results viewing portal for the public to see? Because these are taxpayers' monies that have been expended on elections. And I agree with those who feel, that the conduct, of the last elections, though adjudged as the most planned elections, and the way the logistics were managed, didn't meet the expectations of Nigerians. And Nigerians have a right to ask the question as to whether the outcome and the way this process was conducted justifies the kind of investments that are made. And you need to also look at a myriad of factors that could have been responsible, for this. But I dare say that as we have this conversation, we need to be more nuanced, that there's a lot of wastage, in our election management system. And I give a classic example. If you spend these huge amounts of money, deploying election officials, and these same election officials are engaged in undermining the integrity of the process, these same election officials, are engaged in falsifying election results, these same election officials, are in cahoots with politicians to undermine the credibility of elections. I don't think that it is fair to Nigerians to continue to make investments in people who subvert the process. And I'm not saying all the election officials deployed in the last election are, corrupt or undermined the process. But there are INEC officials, ad hoc officials and permanent officials, including coalition officers, who undermine the integrity of the last elections. And they are paid with taxpayers' money. And Nigerians have a right to ask for accountability. What has happened to those election officials? When you look at the BVAS, the data is clear. The BVAS performs 3 different functions. And when it comes to the accreditation of voters, our findings are to the effect that the BVAS performed optimally in accrediting voters, and it limited voting by proxy, it limited padding of turnout figures in the last elections. We didn't see these, huge amounts of turnout in several states across the country. Why? Because the BVAS functioned optimally. But when it came to the transmission or the upload of results, this is where the BVAS failed and the IREF failed substantially, especially in the upload of presidential election results. And INEC has advanced explanations, but I think there is more that needs to be told with respect to what transpired with the IREF.
All right, Mr. Itodo, so now that you've mentioned it, so let's get to those details. I know there was so much of technical explanation that lay people may not understand. I don't know whether you could help us make sense of the situation. I know there's a line that says, attempts to upload the presidential election results, which does not belong to or map to any state on the database, failed. And it returned the HTTP server response that's in error. And then when they troubleshot, and then they used what they considered the hot fixes to resolve all of this at the end of the day. And they said that 8:55 p.m. on that day was when they uploaded their first results. And so those are some of the things that they're explaining. We have some of them on the screen. But what I'm explaining here is that they are premising the failure on technology, and they hold fast to the fact that it doesn't affect the integrity of the result. Do you agree?
Well, I think, as you're aware, Yaga Africa and Channels TV designed the election results analysis dashboard and ERAD. And so, to a large extent, we monitored the IREF closely prior to the elections and on election day. And I've read the explanation by INEC as stated in the report. And there are 3 questions. Yes, they attribute it to HTTP error, which provides more information about, explaining the whole technical glitch in the statement issued by INEC. But the question is, if this is a technological error, was it accidental, or it was triggered by either the lack of or incompetence of those who were managing the system, or its negligence? I think these are fundamental questions that need to be answered. Yes, systems do fail. As we know, technology is not a silver bullet. Technology fails. Your phones that you use, they fail due to one error or the other. But there must be explanations for it. So when you talk about the base results, based on the report, that the base results were on the database. So how does this happen? You have the BVAS machine, you take an image of the results sheet, it uploads to a database. Now, and I don't want to go too technical, But when it gets to that database, ideally, depending on the code written by, the developer, it is expected that for the database of the presidential results, the code would have lifted the results that have come from the field into that database to the database for presidential elections so that the public can now view the results. The big question is, when you said there was an error, was it attributed to the fact that the individual or a group of individuals who were managing this, erroneously wrote a code that didn't perform that function, or it was, just a function, of a system error? Because there has to be a detailed explanation. And so my sense is there is more in that space that INEC needs to explain to Nigerians.
Right.
Perhaps when it releases its review reports, it will provide more information. But I don't think that, we are satisfied, with this explanation. And perhaps maybe the commission would have also mentioned, the individuals who were behind this, and if they found them complicit, as opposed to, the comments that it has made with respect to the HTTP error. There is more there, and I think that we're going to engage the commission, to provide more information. On the aspects about, whether it impacts on the credibility of the election results, in elections, perception is critical. And I say this with all sense of responsibility, that a failure of the IREV to publish presidential election results cast a blight on the credibility of the elections, because it made it difficult for citizens to believe. And even at Agege Africa and a range of civil society organizations have clearly stated that in several reports, because a lot of public expectations were raised, on the IREV and its capacity as a game changer to inspire confidence. Because prior to the 2023 elections, when INEC deployed the IREV was one tool that inspired public confidence in the outcome of the Ekiti, of the Osun, governorship off-cycle elections.
Right.
And when it came to the presidential, when it was clear that the results, even though election had been concluded across the country, were not being published on the IREV, it dampened, and hurt public confidence, in the electoral process. And so I expect, that as we review the last election, we have to be circumspect about how we measure the credibility of the last election.
Well,
because as an institution, you can claim that the outcome is credible, but if the public does not trust, the process, then you may just be living in your own echo chamber.
Especially when you consider that the public, or at least the way the public perceives the process, is a key component of credibility anyway. But I'd like you to speak to some of perhaps the disappointments that people had with that report. You said that there's going to be a review report also coming in. So I wonder how that will be different from what we've just seen. A lot of people saw this report, which, by the way, had some recommendations, but I think you've talked about that. There were no recommendations for maybe punitive actions for those who may have failed along that process, either in the digital aspects, the management, and the rest. That was conspicuously missing in that report. But I'd like you to speak to a point, because conversation around elections is really in the context of governance and the outcome of governance. Of late, people have been saying elections have consequences. You may have caught that conversation. People saying, oh, you voted for this person, good for you. Anything happens, people go to how the state voted or how certain people voted, and they talk about that. Because I know Agege Africa is also big on civic participation and all of that. I wonder what you have to say as regards to the conversation around elections have consequences, particularly the current mood in the country. Is this good for our democracy? The conversation that people are having saying, well, you voted for the government, good for you. Is that part of civic engagement? How do we place that really in the scheme of things?
Well, I think that, Kayode, in response to your question, we need to take 2 steps backwards. And the question to ask is, how many Nigerians showed up to vote at the last election? And how that impacts on the cost of our elections and the wastage in the system. And I want to make this point. When I talked about wastage in our electoral process, I think voters also have a share of that blame. And here is why. So think about this. You have 93 million registered voters. Each voter entitled to five ballot papers. Those ballot papers are papers produced with taxpayers' money. So in the long run, we would have had close to 400 million ballot papers produced, over 400 million ballot papers produced in the last elections. If you check the number of people who showed up at the elections, 25% of people showed up.
Mr. Itodo.
Of the 93 million.
Mr. Itodo, so you said 25% showed up. I'd like you to please don't forget that line of thought. Please don't forget, because we need to cross over quickly to our correspondents now. You know that today is a big day for the NLC, holding protests in the nation's capital and across the country. So please don't forget that trajectory. We'll come back to you. But let's link up with our correspondent, Dari Dowu, who is live in the Ikeja area of Lagos State. Dari, good morning. I know it must be quite a day, really, that you're anticipating. But tell us what exactly is going on where you're at in Ikeja with regards to the protest which we're expecting today by the NLC.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kayode. Just like you have said, it's a busy day, and on my right now, you can see members of the labor union gathering already. They're gathering momentum. We are live at the Ikeja underbridge. So this is what has happened this morning. Of course, many of those people who are going to be joining this protest said they will be moving from this point to the State House of Assembly in Alausa. If you can hear that, of course, this is expected with protests. There's always this kind of music is blasting really loudly, but I'll speak through it. Just like we've already been established before now, the TUC and some other CSOs won't be joining this protest, but I have right here with me Professor Adelaja Odukoya, a member, is the zonal coordinator of ASU here in Lagos, and he'll be talking to us about what his group is actually, the reason why his group is joining this rally this morning. Good morning, Prof. From what the federal government said before now, they said the NLC, the point raised by the NLC, some of them have been addressed, at least 80% of them have been addressed. Right now, some members of the union, TUC, and some CSOs have pulled out of this protest, but you are joining. Why, sir?
Thank you so much. ASU is joining this protest because our union is an affiliate of the NLC. And when NLC, the Nigerian Labour Congress directs, we obey. So, and apart from that, by our own constitution, we are dedicated to the protection, defense of the condition of the Nigerian people. And again, we are equally committed to the Nigerian project. And more fundamentally, as a union, our members are actually suffering almost more than any other segment of the society, and in silent too of the deteriorating economic condition. For example, we have said it over and over again, our members are still on the same salary they have been since 2009, and that is terrible. A professor at bar, that is a professor that can never get an increment again, is earning less than, is earning just about a party 416,000 naira per month. And when you convert it to the exchange rate, that is barely $213 per month. So a professor in 2009 is richer than a professor today because he's still on the same salary. Then again, the country is in scramble. Our economy is in comatose. So as a responsible union, we have to will bear the carbon call to join this protest so that we can call our leaders to duty. Let them do what they have to do and change the condition of the poor masses. That's why we're here.
So this is a one-off protest. I mean, they're expected to move from here to another point. But how far-reaching do you think this will be, especially for the government to actually listen to the yearning of the unions?
This is a democratic government, and President Tinubu is supposed to be a Democrat. So we want to believe that will be a remarkably different from what we used to know. Either to government have always turned deaf ears to the cries of the people. Either to, when we come out to protest like this and call attention to serious situation in the country, what you see is that the government will just embark on what amounts to tokenism, and before you know what, the battle. But this will be a consistent protest, because what we see now is that people are dying, people are hungry, and people are angry. And if we have to, or if the Nigerian project have to survive and have to endure, then the government must do anything. We have gotten to a turning point in the life of this nation that the people must have their say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Kade, you've heard the professor is the zonal coordinator of ASU here, and he's joining this protest or rally, so to say, called by the NLC. Right now, we're still waiting for more of the union members to gather here at the convergence point in Agege. They're expected to move about 3 kilometers from this point to the State House of Assembly in Alausa. One other thing I can tell you about security is that there's a heavy security presence at this point and at every junction of the 3 kilometers stretch. So just like the police have promised that they would ensure that this is peaceful, and so far it's been peaceful.
Thank you so much, Dare Dowu, for that update. With Labour right there at the Agege underbridge in Lagos State. The procession will, of course, as he said, move to Alausa area. So this is travel advisory for you as well. If you're going to be plying that route, please be advised that there is a protest rally by the NLC, which, by the way, NLC says will be peaceful, and it's good to see security operating.
And let's also remember that it's going to be a two-day protest, today and tomorrow, just to, drive home their demands. And if this doesn't work out, they are going on a strike. But let's head over to Benue State, where we have our correspondent, Pius Angbo, who is also bringing us some updates as well. Pius, we can see policemen around you. What exactly can you tell us that's going on where you are? Where exactly are you in Makurdi, I guess?
Well, thank you, Geoffrey. I'm at the NLC State Secretariat in Makurdi, the Benue State capital, this morning. I spoke to the chairman of NLC, Benue State chapter, yesterday night, and he said the protest will commence by 8 a.m. this morning. And so behind me, you will see a few of the protesters, NLC members, the unionists gathering. But also, before they came here, the police deployment came here in 3 trucks to ensure that the environment, the background is safe for them to do what they want to do. It's a calm environment right now. We hope that very soon the NLC chairman will come and they will start what they are supposed to be doing here today. Nobody's antagonizing anybody, as I understand at this moment. But one of the things I took from one of the NLC members that I spoke with earlier says that they are tired with the daily, in fact, they say hourly increment of commodities in the market. That you buy something now, you go back the next minute, another amount has been added. And that cannot continue in the state of economy they are, where their salaries have not increased in commensuration to their expenditure. And so they want a review of their salary to meet the high cost of living in the country today. Another point they raised was that governors across the country are not doing enough to meet the palliative distribution or breast subsidy removal palliative distribution. And they said that if governors are doing enough with the monies that have come into their coffers, the prices of goods and standard of living would be a bit better than it is now. And so they want a situation where the government can step in and also regulate the price of commodities in the market, that it is skyrocketing without anybody showing any sign of concern in managing the affairs of the country with regards to price inflation.
right, Pius. I'm sure that is a common narrative across the country, but we're going to touch base with you if anything happens around, just like we're reaching out to other correspondents around the country. But we must thank you as well for bringing us that update from Makurdi. And let's remember that this is happening across the country, the NLC protest. But when I head back to Abuja studio, where Yaga Africa Executive Director has been standing by for us. Samson, thank you so much for staying with us. Yeah. I know that you were trying to land on your thoughts. Maybe you pick it up from there.
Making the point that when we talked about wastage, I think Nigerians also need to understand how they contribute to this wastage when they don't show up at elections. So if only 27% of voters showed up at the last presidential elections to vote, what it means, and I want to reiterate that when INEC plans for elections, it plans based on the total number of registered voters that are on our register. And so if only 27% of people showed up, what that means is that over 200 to 300 million ballot papers were wasted. And the money used to produce those ballot papers run into billions of naira that could have been used to provide quality healthcare or drugs in our primary healthcare centers. It could have been used to do what? To pay school fees of the indigent in our society. It could have been invested, in systems that provide social protection, for people. And so when people don't show up, it comes to the country with a cost. So Nigeria has wasted billions of naira because voters refuse to show up at the last elections. So it's important that if you're not showing up at elections, you're actually wasting the resources that have been expended on providing voting materials for you at elections. And that money could have been invested, somewhere else. So, Kayode, when you say, elections have consequences, of course they do have consequences. That's why the whole concept of elections, it's a process for electing leaders that can take decisions on your behalf and solve the problems that you as an individual, cannot solve. And this is why when people go to vote at elections, the fundamental question is, what are you voting for? Who are you voting for? And these are two different things, because often when we go to vote at elections, we are voting based on certain primordial sentiments. And that is not what will give you the quality and the transformative and accountable leadership that you require. This is why issue-based politics has to be central, to our democracy. That we hold leaders, to account prior to the conduct of elections. What is their blueprint on how they're going to lift people out of poverty? How are they going to generate the resources, to solve the problems that people want solved? And I also want to make the point that whether you voted the current president and his party in office, whether you voted the current governor of your state and his or her party, whether you voted the legislators in the National and State House of Assemblies or not, they govern for the country. And it doesn't matter whether you voted them or not. They hold positions in trust, not for the people that voted them into office, but for the constituencies that they represent as well as the country. So every Nigerian does have a right to ask those fundamental questions. And for those who are in leadership, they need to know that they don't serve the interest of a section of society. They serve the common good. And when we say it's the common good, it's for everyone who is a citizen of Nigeria. So voters need to know, that when you vote at elections, know that politics determines everything. This is why you should show up. This is how you should ask the difficult question. But democracy does not start and end with elections. Elections are over. It's time for governance. You have to ask leaders questions about what they are doing, to ameliorate the harsh economic conditions that we are experiencing. And this is why, personally, I stand in solidarity with, the NLC and the civil society groups across the country who are asking this question. That is what democracy is about. But government also has a responsibility to communicate effectively to Nigerians what actions it is taking to resolve this issue in the short term, in the mid-term, and in the long term. But also that the decisions, the policy decisions it's taking, will have effect on the livelihood of Nigerians.
Yeah.
And so when we talked about cutting down the cost of governance, there shouldn't be any discordance or dissonance in what policymakers profess in public as well as their actions. And I see that, yes, the president is taking actions to merge or to align with the policy statements he has made, but he's got to do more. Because these agencies, that have been merged, they aren't, the agencies it's not the total number of agencies that are contained in the Orosanyen report that needs to be merged, either subsumed or expunged from our polity.
Yes, it's an inexhaustible, inexhaustive conversation, Mr. Itodo. And, my mind cleaved to the point that you made about, elections and wastage. So it's instructive for voters to know that their apolitical or apathy towards the electoral process indeed has consequences. There's so many other areas to touch, but we must leave it there for now. We want to thank you very much, Mr. Samson Itodo, Executive Director, Yaga Africa. Thank you for your time and contribution on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Indeed. So we're still keeping our eyes on the process, but specifically the mass protest by the Nigeria Labour Congress against the rising cost of living in the country. This time around, we're turning our attention to Rivers State, where our correspondent Deborah Agbalama is standing by to bring us up to speed with what exactly is happening there. Deborah is at the NLC Secretariat in Port Harcourt. Hello, Deborah. It's good to see you. Looks quite calm where you are. But report, what updates can you bring us as far as the NLC protest is concerned?
Good morning, Bukola. So as you can see, it's calm. There are actually no crowded people here yet. They're coming in pockets, and slightly people are beginning to fill up the compound, but the police is here, as you can see. I earlier sent videos of the police arriving. And so for now, this is what it is. The chairman of the NLC in Rivers State spoke with me last night and told me this convergence will happen from 8 a.m. to take off from here, then to other destinations. But arriving here before 8, and it's past 8 already, getting to 9, still don't have the expected crowd here. However, I spoke with him and he said, perhaps the meeting the NLC had last night, which the outcome was a bit late. The news perhaps might have not gone round enough. So they are circulating messages that the protest is holding because everybody was on standstill waiting for the outcome of that meeting last night. But apparently the meeting ended in a deadlock. And so necessitating the protest to commence to still happen today. So hopefully before 9 o'clock, or perhaps we'll soon have the crowd expected. I'll keep you updated as events unfold.
All right, just before we let you go, Deborah, what can you tell us about how Rivers citizens are processing this planned protest by the NLC?
I actually did a report sometime last week on the hardship people are going through. I personally went to the market to hear firsthand information of how the sufferings of Nigerians are going. And as well, I had interviewed with some civil servants, and sincerely speaking, they are gearing up for this. A lot of them had the fear that NLC will back down at the dying minutes, and they all expressed that fear that, we will all be gingered up for this. And then a night before the protest, we hear they've called it up, but they are very ready. The hardship is real. It's biting hard. My own first-hand information from the market, prices are tripled, and what you can buy before for maybe 80 naira, you have to do over 300 naira or close to 300 naira for that same product. So it's really hard, and they are gearing up for this. And top on the matter, according to my discussion with the NLC chairman, is the fact that when, at the wake of the declaration of removal of subsidy by the president, that they had a meeting with the executive council talking about the president, the ministers and all. And they did agree that there were some measures that would be put in place before bringing
Apparently, we lost connection through to Deborah there, but she was trying to address the meeting that has been held by the leadership of the NLC with the federal government, of course, which we can tell deadlocked. There's still no significant outcome. But one common thread is the rising cost of commodities, whether it's in Lagos, whether it's in Benue, or even in Rivers State, where we heard Pius speak to hourly increase in the price of commodities. So the situation is the same. We hope to get updates from Rivers State and indeed in other parts of the country. When we return, we're going to be switching gears to something that is more lighthearted, but of course also revolves around, the conversations around the rising cost of commodities, as it has to do with the exchange rate. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. We'll now switch gears, but before we switch gears to other conversation where we've been tracking all the happenings in the country as far as this NLC protest and civil society organization is concerned. We've touched base with Benue, we've touched base with Port Harcourt and River State, as well as other places like Lagos. But now, going on now in the nation's capital, Abuja, members of the NLC and civil society allies gearing up. Those are the pictures you're seeing. That's coming from the nation's capital. Quite a number of protesters have begun to arrive, taking up maybe flags and inscriptions and all of that, where the protest is scheduled to take place at the NLC Secretariat. The protesters are expected to leave here at the Secretariat, from here at the Secretariat down to the National Assembly, where the leadership of the NLC will submit its letter to the government. So that's exactly what's happening in the nation's capital, Abuja, as far as this protest is concerned. Let's remind you what this is all about. The hardship, high cost of living, and 2023 agreement between Labour and the government. They're saying it has not been fulfilled. Government is saying 80% has been fulfilled. And they say if by the end of tomorrow nothing actionable is done, then the nation should be ready and be prepared for an indefinite strike action by organized labor, although the TUC has pulled out of this protest. Back here in our studios, of course, at the beginning of the program, if you're with us, we talked about that very famous Agege bread. Agege bread is still famous, by the way. And a gentleman who has done Nigeria proud by not just keeping it in country, is now taking it outside our shores to far away. And is joining us, Wale Rabiu, an entrepreneur and director of Grey Madlock Bakery. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you, Fred.
Well, so some people are wondering, how did Agege bread board the plane and find its way outside the shores? What motivated you?
Wow, I've answered that question several times. And again, let me thank you again for bringing me on the show. Agege bread was not even meant to cross the border or go to the airport and get to Canada. But we were sure about one thing when we were leaving the shore of Nigeria, that we're going to take advantage of any business opportunity. We left the country in 2016, and we've been in business before leaving. We've been into farming, diesel distribution, despite our corporate work, myself and my wife. But we set out to take advantage of any business opportunity as soon as we arrived. And we got to Canada, we saw the opportunity. Ontario is like a Lagos of Canada, where everybody converge, everybody of every ethnic nationalities, wherever they from all over the world. So you can imagine a Nigerian community started growing, and there was no one single Nigerian bakery. So the closest to bread for us then was eating bread baked by the Ghanaian bakeries. So we saw that gap and we took advantage of that.
So for you, the primary market is the Nigerian citizens or Nigerians resident in Canada?
That is where we started from.
Okay.
We needed to get a very good, solid base for the product, for our business. So we targeted the Nigerian community, the African community, but eventually we moved out to other ethnic nationalities.
So it was a deliberate approach at venturing into the business, or you just saw a gap that you wanted to fill?
Okay, like I said, we've always wanted to do business in Canada. But of course, I spent about 14 years of my life in the telecom in Nigeria. So getting to Canada, it was easy to get another telecom role. So I was with Rogers, I was working. Then we saw the gap. Because we had this mindset of taking business opportunity, we saw the gap and we went into it.
So what goes into the baking of this Agege berry? Is it the same recipe that we have back home for Agege bread that goes into the one that you bake in Canada?
It's actually the same thing. Nothing has changed. We probably want to think of, okay, maybe the margarine in Nigeria might not taste like the one in Canada. It's still the same thing. Flour is flour all over the world, you know, it's still the same Agege bread. And that's, I think, the niche that we created that made us, special in Canada, because people have been eating bread all over the world. Bread was broken in the Bible, So there's nothing new about bread. But the fact is, we decided to make bread the same exact way bread is eaten in Nigeria, and that's what we presented to the world in Canada.
Bread is so important that it's even in a prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. Just to show how important it is, and we're seeing the process. It's quite interesting we're having this conversation in the context of the economic reality in Nigeria. We're seeing protests across the board, and the slogan is end hunger. Right. That's the slogan for the protest. And we know how bread is important, how important bread is. We've seen bread causing protests in a lot of climes, but it's quite interesting to see how you are taking that commodity and you are feeding 5,000 or more. There's no fish with yours. But speak to this. You said you've also been involved in agriculture. Now you are essentially still involved in feeding. Do we have a reason really to be hungry in Nigeria?
The answer is no. I think simple and straight, no. And one of the things that hurts me more than any other thing is the fact that with the level of arable land across the country, we still have not been able to achieve food security or self-sufficiency in food production. Simply put, we can't feed ourselves. That is so painful for me. And maybe bread is just a way of starting it. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that we have decided to go into coming back to Nigeria is famine, food famine. I think it's something that is difficult for some of us to sink in, that we have all of this arable land and people are still crying of hunger, And this doesn't necessarily mean government should do the farming alone, but individuals should get into farming.
I'm seeing that, I'm looking at the process. So for the benefit of those of us who don't know how this is done, maybe you can walk us through this process, because I've seen them make Agege bread in Yaba. Sorry, Yaba people, I have to mention, because that's why I eat a lot of Agege bread. I don't think I saw it like this. I saw, the literal, is it over now? They're doing it, pulling it with that plank and bringing it on the ground and all of that. But is it because of the climb you're in, or this is how it should be made? Does it even compromise? Does it still retain that Agege-ness? Forgive me. With Africa, we have this thing that if it's not pounded with hand, it loses the fidelity and integrity.
I understand what you're talking about. But the fact is, we actually did not start this way. We just needed to upgrade and automate our process. So what you're seeing now is a bread line. And this is the best you can get in any mechanized or automated bakery setting, So it's a line Probably what bigger bakeries will have now will be maybe several of these lines, but this is a complete bread line, you know. So it's still the same. It's still the same. The end product is the same thing. It's still Agege bread, but instead of the way we do it here, and that's how we actually started in Canada too. We started by having all of this equipment in silos, you know. But what we have been able to achieve is a complete bread line. But the bread tastes the same thing. Doesn't take anything away from the sweetness, the richness of our Agege bread.
The slimy, how slimy.
The stretchy, the chewy.
Okay, stretchy, not slimy.
Fluffy.
That's the real
soft
word.
I think that's what we've been able to...
And dissolves well with ewa going.
Yes, correct. And that's what we've been able to sell to the world out there, that you can eat bread in a special way. Even one thing we realized that even bread eaters, people that have been eating bread for years, they taste Agege bread and they were surprised. Wow, bread can be this yummy. You know, I tell people to describe it as being yummy and not sweet, because it's not as if Agege bread is extra sweet with sugar. It's just that it's yummy. The process of baking it is makes it different from every other bread.
Speaking of which, what's the reception like, not just for Nigerians now, because you are in a multiracial community, but also across the nationalities that reside in Canada?
Okay, the beauty of Canada is, like you said, is a multiracial. We have people from all over the world. But in terms of reception, we started our business in a city called Brampton, and Brampton has almost every ethnic nationality. So it was easy for our product to be received very well. So we were able to sell to a representative of every country, or representative of every continent across Canada. So it was easy for us to move even beyond our community, that is the African Caribbean community, into other ethnic nationalities. We have the Indians, we have the Chinese, we have the Asians, we have even the original Canadians dropping their bread for our bread. And that's why we don't take the bread outside of over 300 African Caribbean stores. We now have our bread in the big box stores. So we signed a deal with Loblaws. Loblaws is the biggest grocery chain in Canada, retail chain in Canada, and they have stores like No Frills, Rick Canadian Superstores, Profigo. We have.
They don't charge us for commercial.
Oh, okay then. Okay. So, just to let you know how we've been able to take the bread out of Agege to every tables in Canada.
Fantastic, and it's phenomenal. And I'd like us to link this to our current situation, because again, we're speaking in the current context, and a lot of people watching, yes, they love the bread. They probably want to taste the bread. By the way, did you bring bread? You talked about how you always bring bread back home, and that's very interesting.
There's no way I'll come to Nigeria without bringing bread.
So you bring Agege bread back. Definitely. Lovely. So just talk to us about how, what the differences are, because we see people still, producing or baking Agege bread in Nigeria. They're still at that same level, the same process which Jeffrey described is what they're doing till date. But you've been able to scale up there. So is it a thing with the climb, with the government, the economic realities,
or regulations,
such that we can maybe replicate? As you said, you don't have a reason to be hungry in Nigeria. No. So maybe we can begin to compare notes. We have the ideas, we have the flavor, the taste. Maybe let's borrow some processes and make this work right here in Nigeria with food and other businesses.
Well, as you can see from the video we're playing, these are Nigerians baking the bread. They're not, of course, we have every other ethnic nationalities working for us. We have the Canadians, we have the Indians, we have the Jamaicans. We even have our brother Ghanaians working in the bakery.
So Nigeria bread has one Ghana bread.
Yes, we've taken a lot.
Go ahead.
Eventually.
That's the war you want to start.
So, but the beauty of it is wherever we have it can be replicated. And I believe there might probably be one or two bakeries doing this in Nigeria too, because these are just basic. In the context of bakery, bread baking, these are basic, although best world-class equipment, but they can be produced they can be used and in baking bread in Nigeria.
Government support that you had that was different there, or what exactly is different?
Okay. I try not to go into some of this conversation, but I'll just tell you, the basic thing is the enabling environment, I would say. Then the financial institutions are willing to support small businesses. We can't overemphasize the importance of small businesses in our economy, whether it is in Canada, in Nigeria. And I think that is the area where we need to focus in Nigeria. Right. Small businesses, so that we can.
I think you've hit it on the head, the nail on the head exactly, which has to do with a lot of support, and we hope that the government, there are efforts in that direction. The question is always whether it can move the needle because of the number of MSMEs we have across the country. There are loads of them looking for one form of support and being believed. First, they have to believe in them to invest in them. So we hope that the government will do the same, just like the environment you're coming from. Mr. Wale Rabiu is an entrepreneur and director of Grey Madlock Bakery, credited for exporting Agege bread from Nigeria to Canada and maybe around the world. Thank you so much for coming.
Sure. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, guys, on that Agege bread note, we wrap up the program. I want to thank you for your time and, of course, your usual company. But before we go, I understand that before we go, we need to just touch base with Bauchi. You know, we've been reaching out to all our correspondents to find out what's going on. Yes, so that's the picture from Bauchi just before we go. So you can see NLC Secretary there, security men being stationed right in front. I'm sure they are converging to get ready for their protest. Well, so far so good across all the places we've touched base with. This is Bauchi, Port Harcourt, Lagos, and Benue. We haven't had any incidents of violence and all of that, which is what a peaceful protest should be about. So that's Bauchi. You can see NSCDC as well as other security agencies standing by, I guess, to secure the people and help them have a peaceful protest. Well, that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and, of course, your usual company. I'm Jeffrey Uzongo.
Some people are about to go get Agege bread right after they sign out. Well, we'll try and join them. Thank you for watching. Join us again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, thanks to Mr. Rabi for that. And it's important to note that he's also shortlisted, so there's business here as well. So for Nigerians in diaspora, it's important to replicate whatever you're doing out there right here in Nigeria, because Nigeria can do with all of the help we can get. Thank you so much for watching. Stay with Channels Television for all the breaking news today, particularly with that protest and other issues. I'm Kayode Okikele. Goodbye.